In this special episode of Toolbox, I talked to Carlos Solis about the differences between junior and senior developers. I'm also doing some live AI image generation with Dall E, and I'll talk about some of the newest frameworks. The pace of the web is relentless, and that's why you need the Toolbox. Hello everyone, this is Villalobos, and I stream about front-end and full-stack tools Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. Follow me and subscribe on LinkedIn and YouTube for more content. And if you want to watch any past episodes, make sure you take a look at my blog, which is at rabo.org. So, you can find an article there for today's episode, which is right here. And if you want to, there's also an article for just the interview that I'm doing with Carlos in just a minute. So, if we take a look at this at the bottom of the interview, this is streaming live on YouTube as well, and I think on Facebook now. I'm trying that out. But at the bottom of this article, you can find all of the links to everything we're talking about. So if you miss something, the links should be all right here, and you can refer to those at any point in time later on. So also make sure that you check out my profile on LinkedIn, which is at linkedin.com/in/planet of the web. And there you can also find right now the current episode that is running, but all the different things that I'm talking about. Here's the link to the episode today. And what you should do is, if you want to, I usually post about front-end and full-stack tools every day, once or twice a day sometimes. So if you want to keep up with all the links and all the things that I'm talking about, you can click on the sort of notification icon. However, I can't show it to you right now because for some reason it doesn't appear on your own page. So it should be where the pencil icon is right now. And today I'm talking to Carlos Solis. So if I go to his profile, you can actually see the notification icon, which is right here. So I'm going to turn that thing on to make sure that I'm notified of anything going on or anything that he posts about. And make sure you do that for me as well. Of course, you can do that on YouTube as well. So usually I go over some industry news at the beginning of the episode, and today I'm going to talk about a few things that are related to what we're discussing with Carlos later on. So this week, I'm actually going to start with something that is not, it's very late breaking, so it's not on the show notes just yet, but it will be as soon as I get off of this. So GitHub has now released the projects that is issues based. If you've never used projects, it's kind of a newer way of looking at how you create projects within GitHub. So before, GitHub used to have, or still has, a Kanban style board that just lets you create issues, and then you can move the issues across a Kanban board, which we'll be talking to Carlos Solis about today, the different things that happen in agile development. But now they've upgraded that and they've made this open to everyone. So before, you were able to get these features by looking at, or by special invitation only, open beta I think it was, and I've been using it in the last month to sort of track a project. Really amazing. I mean, I can't go back to just Kanban boards. It allows you to create groupings, as you can see right here, as well as filter and custom views for everything. And it really changes the way that you work on projects because it just gives you a different way to look at things. And then you can have custom views for different types of things that you're looking at. So for example, you can look at any of the issues, filter them by all kinds of different things, and then display that view according to the columns that you want to see. And there's even a way of creating custom columns. That makes it super powerful. So if you haven't looked at that, make sure that you activate that. It should be pretty easy. Just go to any any sort of GitHub repo that you have and create a project, or in your GitHub account or in your GitHub Enterprise account, just create a project, and you should be able to take a look at the new view. Super amazing. You're going to love it. I really want to do another episode soon on just all the features and everything that I found that was amazing. Like I said, I recently tracked a pretty big project with it, so I'm super excited, and I can't wait for you guys to try it. I don't know if anybody has seen it. Make sure that you comment in the chat, and definitely something that you're going to be excited about, especially if you work with projects. Even if you don't work with projects, it's just a great way to sort of like, if you don't work with maybe tracking a repo, the project that I was actually managing wasn't necessarily tied to a repository. So I just used basically the project management features to manage how the project was going independently of, an actual repository. But it allows you to use all of the GitHub issues, GitHub discussion features directly into that. So yeah, make sure that you check it out. And so, yeah, you're gonna love it. I've been using it for quite a while, and I think that you're gonna love it. I already see some stuff on the chat. So let's see. Somebody's asking, is it live or recorded? It is both live and recorded, so you can ask questions, and feel free to ask them right now. As I mentioned, there's going to be an interview that is recorded, pre-recorded, that I did with Carlos Solis, but Carlos is actually in the chat right now, so if you have any questions while the interview is playing, he and I will be taking a look at the questions and answering them live, and then he's going to come in with me at the end of his interview, and we're going to take additional questions live. So queue them up if you have them. Some of the stuff that I'm talking about today is pretty exciting and related to what we discussed in the interview. So make sure you check it out. It is both live and recorded. There's like a live component that we're, doing right now. And then there is a pre-recorded component, and then we'll answer questions live as well. So the people from all over the place. So Valencia, Spain. Hello, everyone. Let's see. Oh, cool. I love it when the LinkedIn user, which is, you can actually, sort of not share your, your information. And so when you do that in one of these shows, you appear as the generic LinkedIn user. So yes, Evangelos, yeah, this is already being recorded. If you go to rabo.org, it's probably the easiest way to find it. If you subscribe to the LinkedIn event, that will also appear on the left-hand side. Depending on how many events you take, it should be right there on the left-hand side. So, for example, if I go to my profile and I scroll down, I have it in here. You can also go to my profile. But if you just go to the regular LinkedIn page, on the left-hand side, it shows you all the things that you're doing. And this is the link to the event that we're doing right now. So that's another cool way of finding it. Let's see if there's anything else I want to answer before I get into some of the other news. So Evan Hilke said that would be available. Yeah. Is there a link to the YouTube live? Yeah, you could go to youtube.com/Planet of the Web. That's the shortcut to Planet of the Web. Also, if you go to rabo.org, the video that plays there is actually from YouTube, because it's easier to embed onto a page from YouTube right now for me. So that's another quick way of finding it. And there is a channel if you want to check any past episodes. There's playlists on YouTube as well. It makes it easier to aggregate stuff. I'm sure eventually LinkedIn will grab all those features as well. So make sure that, there's a link. Video image isn't showing. Well, I'm seeing it on the LinkedIn app. So I don't know if you maybe need to refresh or something. I don't know if anybody else is having any problems with that. Sometimes the LinkedIn live streaming goes a little haywire. So I apologize if anybody is having problems. I don't see any other questions per se. I think I left a couple of early questions. So today we're talking about all kinds of cool things, including like micro front ends. We're talking about, GitHub packages and also monorepos with Carlos. So I'd love to hear if you've tried any of those things, or if you just have questions about how to work with them. He's done actually a couple of cool courses that I think like everybody should take. I was really impressed with sort of the courses themselves, but then I really realized that everybody should be taking those and have those, especially if you're in the industry. You need to know how to do a monorepo today. you need to know how to do a GitHub package. And I think it teaches you how to be more of a senior developer when you do those things. So first off, the first thing I wanted to show you other than this GitHub projects is Dall E. So Dall E is this new AI system. It's basically an artificial intelligence GTP3 based image generator. So if you've heard of GitHub CoPilot, this does something similar, but with images. It's basically allows you to create realistic images using plain text definitions. They just started opening their project to early adopters. So I saw this a while back and I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. You can create all these like images by just typing in some descriptions. Which is pretty awesome. I mean, the images are these like square type images. I was a little bit less impressed when I tried it. So here is where I can type in. You can see some of the default images, but they end up being these like square images. And if I type something in here, I'm gonna hit surprise me. You get like when you get admitted into the early adopter release, you get like 50 images to try. And I'm gonna type in. I'm just gonna hit surprise me. If anybody wants me to type something in, I would type. Just put it in the chat, and I'll try to generate some images from what you guys put in the chat as well. So you hit the button. You can see some of the ones that I've created here, and maybe I'll go through them. I was really trying to get like a cool programmer unicorn, and it was a little bit tough. So it'll sit there, and essentially it's using looking at a ton of images and having the artificial intelligence generate something from whatever text you type. So if anybody has any cool ideas, I will totally type them in. Just put in like AI colon and then I'll type them in maybe even later on so we can share them. So stained glass window depicting a robot. Okay, that's not bad. It did a pretty cool job. This is kind of like a little Boba Fett style robot, which is cool. Sometimes like the resolution, like the edges are a little bit sort of not as clear. So that's interesting. If you take a look at some of the ones, like I had my kids try to generate some images. So we thought of my dog as a Boston Terrier. His name is Mojo. So we typed in a Boston Terrier superhero saving a cat. I'm not sure that it got it because here's a Boston Terrier, but the cat's kind of like, well, I don't know, maybe the cat's like beating up on the Boston Terrier or something. They're having like a fight. So, maybe not 100%. I don't know if it would do anything when somebody said, why don't you type in your name? I don't know what it would do with my name. I think it wants like a sentence. So be thinking about some cool stuff that you can put in. I tried typing in unicorn programmer in chibi style, and I got some pretty decent ones. I love chibi style Japanese art. And I'm really been sort of thinking about how unicorn is kind of the, I don't know, official, icon for a developer, I thought. So that was another thing that I typed. And then let's see, I tried 3D unicorn developer. All right, I like this one. This one came up pretty cool. Let's see, what else did it do? Then I tried typing a chicken crime fighter, and it gave me this really odd, I don't know, Arnold Schwarzenegger sort of style chicken here. Wasn't into it. I should have maybe, you need the more descriptive that you are, I think the better that it will do. I'm not sure that it really got what I was looking for. It's too generic. I think I need to just go deeper in here. And then I tried in a chicken superhero fighting crime. I think these are pretty decent. I could totally use some of these. I think that they also have a way to pay for these, and maybe you can change the size because these are all like square. Oh, this is cool. So somebody says NASA astronaut in a UFO. So I'll try that one next. Yeah. And somebody says, make sure that you get rid of the questions on this stream. All right, so let me try this one that somebody recommended. So NASA astronaut in a UFO. That sounds cool. Let's try it. So it does take a little bit to generate it. I'm not sure. I mean, the thing about these new AI, especially GP3 sort of tools, is that the reason a lot of times they are charging for this is because they are looking at, they're essentially, it's looking at a lot of computing power to do all the artificial intelligence necessary to like gather all the data to draw these images. I'm not sure this, person is in a UFO. I mean, I like the I don't know, sort of like a grandmother in a UFO with a bunch of extra fingers or something. So sometimes this is a pretty cool image, but I wish they were in a UFO. So I don't know. Uh, I don't know. The astronaut appears to be kind of coming out of the UFO here. And no, that was pretty cool. I don't know that I would say that that's definitely a NASA astronaut, but yeah, that's something. If you guys put some other ones, I may come back to this and try these out later. I just think this technology is pretty awesome. If you've seen, like, there's other things that you can do to generate music. And I do have some applications that will do that. It will let you generate some like random music based from other styles, and it does a pretty sweet job. Oh, hold on, I got to do this one next. So somebody says a Star Wars walker as a bus. These are great. Let me try that and see. I don't know if it's gonna know. Star Wars, Star Wars. I'm gonna say AT-AT, see if it knows what that is. That's a bus uh, destroying a city. Let's check this out. All right, so let's hit generate, see what it does. I adjust. Oh, this is cool. Capybara. Well, painting of a portrait of a capybara. Nicely done. Let's see what it does with this one, and then we can move on. But if you have any more, I'll share them with you. You just put them in the chat, and I'll share them with you later. I think it's a pretty cool tool, and it's in its infancy. So, oh, this is sort of cool. I mean, this is sort of like an AT&T. I don't know. Some of these, this looks almost like like that transport that the Jawas use. I don't know. It didn't do such a great job with this. Maybe I should have just done Star Wars and then put the Walker. Let's try Walker. All right, we'll let that one run for a while. So let's go through some of the other things. So this week, I wanted to share with you some of the things that are going on in the industry. And I'm going to start with something that's not necessarily a new thing. So you may have heard of this thing called Deno. Most of today's web software is developed on Node.js, which lets you work with JavaScript on the server. So things like node modules are created in this framework, but it's pretty old. And so the original creator of Node.js, which was Ryan Dall, he created a new framework called Deno, and it lets you do things slightly differently. So it lets you use things like fetch, WebSockets, built-in support for like TypeScript and JSX. So it's a more modern version. It really hasn't had a ton of traction. I don't know if anybody's tried it. I haven't really had the time to try it. I've been meaning to do it, but I haven't, sort of taken the jump yet. When you work with something like Node.js, basically what you're doing is you're creating a server. It does have HTTP2 support, which is faster and lets you handle modules like a little bit better. TypeScript and JSX, ES modules with HTTP import. So a lot of sort of features that you wish were on Node.js. So fetch is something that I think is coming now into Node.js. WebAssembly, all kinds of cool stuff. But it really hasn't dramatically impacted the industry. The one thing that is new that I wanted to talk about is that they just released the first framework based on Deno, which this is kind of interesting. Also, really awesome website. So this is called Fresh, and it's on my list of new things to try out. It's the first framework based on Deno. And basically, it's designed to send zero JavaScript to the client. This is the interesting thing that's happening in the industry. A lot of stuff is moving to server. So we went through this sort of transition where things were being pre-rendered. So my website used to be pre-rendered, and then I would essentially do a build process, and then I would push all of the whole site onto the server. Now I'm doing everything with cloud computing, so it's a little bit easier. But this framework essentially handles most of the stuff on the server, and it generates all of the content statically on the server. So think of it as a server-side rendering engine that generates all the JavaScript you need for a specific page, but when it is needed. And so it's kind of like server-side rendering of JavaScript. The whole industry is moving more towards the server because although the advantage of pre-generating all your pages is that everything is super fast, right? But with a lot of frameworks, what was happening is the JavaScript itself still has to like run on the client side with something like React what would happen is, it would generate all of the pages, all the HTML, the CSS for individual pages. But then when you had to run JavaScript, it would have to load React and all the things that React needs, and then it would just generate the interactivity for that page after loading some of these other things. So in order to save time, like what Fresh is doing is basically pre-rendering all the JavaScript customized to the individual page and doing that all on the server. So you would just worry about building the site, and Fresh would take care of generating all the JavaScript for you. So is this similar to Next.js? Yes and no. The thing about Next, somebody did ask, is it similar to Next.js? I would say yes and no. The thing about Next.js is that um, it almost like adds any kind of new features that are coming into the web thought into itself. Like it has server side rendering. It has like all these new features, but this one's, I believe it's platform agnostic. I don't know if it specifically requires React, which Next.js would, but the concept is that you are pre-rendering, rendering on the fly the JavaScript, and it doesn't require a build step, which is really cool. I think that with something like Next, what would happen is you're kind of doing something similar. So I guess it would be similar, but there are some differences. This is one of the ones that I really want to do a demo of as soon as I can, because I think it's an interesting idea, and I'd never seen something, kind of focused on what Deno is trying to do, which is building a better version of Next.js. So let's see if there's anything else in here. Oh, so there's a couple of other suggestions. Yeah, so I would say, yeah, it's similar maybe to Next.js, but I think it's trying to do something different. And it looks like, when I talk to Carlos in a minute, you'll note that what we're talking about is the important thing to know with all these frameworks is not understanding very specifically what each framework does, but kind of getting a feel for where the industry is headed. And so it looks like the industry is moving towards server-side rendering, edge computing, things that get processed by the server. And this particular framework exemplifies that. And also micro front ends, which is something that Astra lets you do. So, and there's another new, it's not exactly a framework, but there's another new tool out there, and I've never seen anything. This wins the award for the most hyped new framework I've seen. This is a new JavaScript runtime that's once again server-based. It's completely different than other runtimes. So it tries to sort of, it's competing with like Node and Deno. So this is a third sort of leg. So we've had Node, we've had Deno, and now there's this thing called Bun. It's more of a comprehensive sort of method for creating things, but it comes in with built-in JavaScript and TypeScript support. It has a native JavaScript runtime. So the JavaScript runtime is what makes something like Node.js work. So Node basically uses, I believe, Chromium to let you do JavaScript on the server. Deno is trying to do something like that, but with its own kind of newer language that gives you all these features. So Bun is like a third one now. And what it's trying to do that's different is that it's using a different engine. Whereas like Node and Deno, I believe, are using Chromium. This one's using JavaScript Core, which is, I believe, what runs Safari. And so this, again, it gives you some of the similar features to like what Deno is trying to do, access to web APIs like Fetch and WebSocket, as well as JSX and TypeScript support. So you're seeing that also be part of like where the industry is going. TypeScript, JSX is almost like becoming pretty standard, although I am not a fan. This is why I love Svelte a little bit more. And you can use modules in Bun. You can use either ESM or CommonJS bundles, which means a little flexibility with older style kind of bundles, like different ways of creating modules and stuff. And that's pretty much how you import JavaScript when you create JavaScript in different pieces. Now, another interesting thing is that it's written in a new language that I never heard of. It's called Zig. I don't know if anybody's heard of this. Let me know, I guess, in the comments. So this is, Zig is a general purpose programming language. We've heard a lot about things like Rust, that it's becoming like a more important not a backend, but it's becoming a more important program for pieces of the web that need to be more performant. So it lets you create code that is precompiled, and then so for things that need to run super fast, you don't want to run those things on the client side. You want the server to, process things in a much faster manner. So this is where Rust was going, but now there's a new thing, and I don't know, developers are always coming up with new things called Zig. So I don't know if you're interested in some lower level languages that are performance based, but I just thought that since this is not, I'm not gonna say it's popular because it's like early beta right now, but because I've heard so much about this bun thing, you may want to learn about this Zig language as well. And of course, if you haven't heard about Rust, it's really running a lot of the performant things that are happening on the web. So, in addition to that, the other news that I wanted to talk about is Carbon, if you haven't heard about it. So, Carbon is the new language that is supposed to replace C++. Now, the interesting thing about Carbon is that it doesn't try to get rid of C++, because I think that would be impossible. There's too many people that have been using that language for so long. But it tries to be more like how TypeScript works with JavaScript. It's like a language that lets you program in JavaScript, but it has some advanced features as well. And so that's where Carbon is going. So it's 100% compatible with C++. So you can use your existing code and modules, but it just tries to be a more modern language because C++ is really a pretty old language. So I don't see any other questions. That's what I like to do at the beginning of these episodes, is kind of give you an idea of what the industry is doing. So I'm really excited to talk to Carlos, or to show you the interview that I had with Carlos, because this is kind of the third in this series of Toolbox talks that I've done. And I've talked to Ronnie Share about Python. I talked to Christina Trong about CSS and some of her experiences, and now I'm talking to Carlos. It's pretty cool. I think you'll learn a lot, and learn a lot about some of the courses that he's done that I really, after doing this episode, I really thought that everybody should go take those two courses, because everybody should know. I think it was going to put you, think ahead of, especially if you're applying for a job, to understand about GitHub packages, because it teaches you to, I think, be a better developer, to try to do something not just for yourself, but try to do something for the community, and it could potentially make you some money. So let's go ahead and play the interview, and hopefully I'll have Carlos and I will be answering questions. If you have any questions about anything that I've talked about, or any more ideas for me to generate some art, just write it in the comments, and we'll be monitoring them while this demo plays out. Carlos Solis is a professor, developer, and certified Scrum Master with more than 20 years of experience in the industry. He's also the author of A Warrior's Guide to AngularJS. He's an expert on building hybrid mobile applications, as well as Node.js, PHP, SQL, and Java. Now, he lives in Santiago, Chile, where he works as a product evangelist for Modio. Hola, Carlos.
Hola, Ray. What a great pleasure to be here. Let me tell you, I'm a big fan of the show, so I'm really, really happy to participate.
Your original education was in psychology. How did you get from there to becoming a web developer?
When you start learning psychology, one of the most important talents it's how to listen to people. Once you develop that, it helps you to create better relations with developers, to create different products, and the most important thing for me, it helps you to think out of the box. I don't have the same background as everyone else, so what about if we try this?
Yeah, and I know that you have solid developer skills. So I think it's almost like an added bonus for somebody who's trying to get into the industry today. Would you recommend somebody who maybe doesn't have a technology degree?
First of all, I think that different backgrounds are extremely important in a development team. My mentor, painter, I have people that started in biology and ended in technology. Different backgrounds helps to enrich the products. When I almost ready for my degree in psychology, I get sick. So I'm a cancer survivor,
Oh,
and I
wow.
spent 3 years of my life in a bed. So that's kind of boring. So I have to figure out what to learn, what to do during that time. And it was in the early times of internet, so basically I teach myself ActionScript, and eventually I became certified in ActionScript, and
Wow.
eventually I become unemployed because of
So
ActionScript.
hold on,
But
before you get too far into that
yeah,
story, and just because I know we're gonna have some people that don't know what you're talking about, what is ActionScript?
yeah, the good old days,
Yes,
of
yes.
course. Yeah, ActionScript was a language on technology that we used to work, which is
Mhm,
Flash. That's part of the early internet, and it's something similar like JavaScript nowadays.
mhm.
The bad thing about ActionScript is like eventually it just died. Change is the constant here. Never get stuck with one technology because it will eventually change. Yeah.
That's so true. And luckily for you, I think ActionScript is very, very similar to JavaScript. It might be
Oh yeah.
inspired by JavaScript. I wonder if you think that anything else special helped you from your psychology experience.
The professional you become, it depends on the people that are around you. One thing I learned from my early steps was to get surrounded by people that is far better than me.
Not everybody understands that it's okay for you to be with somebody who is smarter than you and can teach you. You mentioned you had a mentor. I mean, it takes a
Yeah.
lot of humility to accept that there are people who are better than you and find those people because they can help you quite a bit.
The best developers are humble people because we most of the time are wrong. We have different solutions for the same problems. Maybe our solution is not the best for that specific problem and that specific scenario, and so it's important to have good mentors. One of my mentors was a painter, and one thing I learned is that you can always perfect your craft. That
Mhm.
is maybe the most important value that he gives me. When you code, it's about how to make your team create a better product. That is a social exercise.
You know, that's one thing that you really don't learn in school, how to work in a team environment, which I think is
Oh,
so critical because you're sort of avoiding teams most of the time when you're in college. One of the things that you are really passionate about and actually good about is this concept of the agile methodology. Can you talk a little bit about that and that how that relates to working in teams?
yeah. And let me tell you one thing. The
Mhm.
first thing I started working with Agile, I just hated it. I hate it with my guts. But eventually I learned how to make it good, how to get value from your team, and how you can create actually great products working as a
Mm.
team. And I started to that grows in me eventually. The first contact people have with agile methodologies or Scrum, that kind of things, we don't like change. One thing I didn't like is like the meetings, so much time wasted. I remember I say that, so much time wasted. I could be programming, this could be an email. But actually I learned that good meetings, when you do it properly, meetings are important because
Mhm.
if you plan properly, if you have that interaction with your coworkers, this way you can think of a better product. The thing that I hate the most was actually the most important thing.
That's so interesting. Can you describe what the agile methodology is?
Agile, in a nutshell, it's a way that we can interact with products in a progressive way. So we can start with a small product and we can develop better products using experience
Mhm.
and using teamwork.
So how would you describe it against like the alternative?
Yeah, the old way was usually some kind of waterfalls. It's called waterfalls because once you have one step, you go to the other and the other and the other on different
Mhm.
phases. The problem is if you have all the specs from the very beginning, you don't know the outcome of your product. But using agile methodologies, we constantly improving, and if it's needed, we can pivot to another way. We're trying to find the problem and fix the issues during the development.
Mm.
And from the early steps, we try to have a complete product to deploy a product and people start using it. So it's very important to keep feedback from the users.
So you start out by trying to create a complete product, even though it might not be the greatest thing, but something that is maybe
No.
usable like right away. And then you iterate and you ask yourself, is what we're doing the right thing? Or, a lot of times
Exactly.
you learn something from having developed it, that takes you into another direction.
Every popular application that we have that we use nowadays, they usually start with a very simple basic product, usually something called an MVP, a minimal viable product. Most of the products and applications and services that we use, they didn't start in the same way that they are now, and
Mm,
that is the results of agile methodology.
mm.
That's the way for a successful product, to follow what your users want.
So that concept of pivoting is kind of built into the process.
We don't have the perfect answer to anything.
Mhm.
There's uncertainty. We don't know what people need. So we start listening. Hey,
Mm.
do you like this? Oh, okay, you don't. Maybe if we try something different, what about this? And that's the way we can iterate and create better products. Usually, we have one meeting a day, just to synchronize with everyone. And usually, every couple of weeks, we have a planning meeting. And every time we finish that cycle, that is usually a couple of weeks, up to a month, once we have that cycle ended, we can think of pivoting, improving, changing.
So I'm already nervous when you said a daily meeting. Like that's scary now. No, I can
Yeah.
understand like a few days. I was thinking like every other week. What do you do on a daily meeting on this sort of structure?
Oh, daily meetings are so important. And one thing that I used to hate, but it's important, because if you do it properly, it works. So,
Hmm.
one important thing, for example, in Scrum, we have to keep a track of the time we spend on that meeting. So it's just 15 minutes.
Mm,
It's not like an hour. In Scrum, on a daily meeting,
hmm.
basically it's the developers. Developers just synchronize, and it's just like, okay, I have this problem. Do you guys can help me work on that? Yeah, I can do this. And that's it.
Do all the developers like talk in that meeting? I mean, what happens
Yeah.
if you get the guy trying to tell his story from when he used to play ball in high school and
Yeah, that's the job of a role called the Scrum Master. The Scrum Master is
mm,
the guy that it's like, okay, yeah, nice to hear that. We can talk about that later. Let's talk about the business here,
right, right.
so we can keep track of that. Yeah.
So you're mentioning now something called Scrum. How is that different? Is it a subset of Agile, or what exactly is the difference between Agile and Scrum?
We have different flavors of agile. For example, we have extreme programming. In extreme programming, it's important to keep everything tested and pair programming, that kind of things. It's the way we work on extreme programming. Or things like Kanban, like we don't have that daily meetings,
Hmm.
we don't have that cycles, it's just a board, and we
Mm,
try to move things on the board, constantly improving the product, but without a cycle. That
yeah.
depends on the way the product works, on the team, on the organization. But basically, there's an agile well for every organization. Yeah.
So there are different styles of Agile. You mentioned Kanban, which I
Yes.
really love. And when you mention extreme programming, I'm digging that. Like I want to do some of that, whatever the heck it is. I don't know.
Cool.
That's how you sell it to developers. You go like, yeah, today we're gonna try tiger programming, and you have like in the kung fu movies, like the different styles of kung fu,
Extreme.
right? Like I think like with those names like that, I think it's now I'm
Yeah.
excited. Maybe I'll go try some of that. So tell me about change in the industry. What are some of your favorite changes that have happened in the industry?
I like changes. You have to keep track of the important voices of the industry. You have to know what's going on.
Hmm.
And for me, the most important change I made is to keep track of everything new. One technique I use, I don't know if you ever heard, is the second brain. There's a book from Tiago Forti, highly recommended. It's about how to keep track of massive information.
Hmm.
So everyone that works on this industry needs to deal with lots and lots of information. Every day we have changes. Every day we have a new framework. Every day we
Hmm.
have a new technology, new languages. So how to keep track of that? I use Notion, for example. Basically, what I do is to store information for future me,
Hmm.
and when things change, I am ready.
Great advice, actually. Like establish a system for keeping
Yeah.
up with changes. Like, I subscribe to a lot of newsletters, for example. this show is one of my ways of making sure that I sort of keep up. I do a little bit of news at the beginning. And then I also you mentioned Notion. I use Obsidian, which is like a similar product to make sure
Great.
that my life is organized. What's important is for you to kind of keep it in the back of your mind. And if it starts becoming louder and louder, then you need to find out what the interesting
Absolutely.
thing is. So, for example, we've heard a lot about edge functions and things coming back to the server. Server-side rendering is becoming like more interesting and important. And you don't have to know like Astro or any of the new frameworks, but you have to know what's happening and understand that at some point, people are going to want you to know about those things and maybe have a little bit of experience.
If you keep notes, it's important to update those notes. Everyone has this hard drive or notebooks that never read. Create one exercise to have a
Yeah.
training, a basic
Mhm.
training on that. That's the only way I handle it.
Part of the system means trying it out. Like you said, and don't just store the
Oh, yeah.
knowledge. But the reason I started the show is I wanted to keep track of the things that were happening in the industry, give people an opportunity to have a quick demo that they could build to understand the main concept. Then maybe if you've got some time, once a week, do a little exercise. And so you understand, oh, wow, this new thing is pretty awesome. So I understand that you have some extensive experience, for example, in mobile development. Speaking about translating your knowledge, do you think that that's still a place where developers can make a living? And
I mean, mobile development is not just a niche nowadays. It's
mm,
everyone works with mobile. It's one of the most important mediums. So
right.
everyone needs to be familiar with that. If you're a front-end developer, for example, needs to keep track of resolutions, specs,
Hmm.
size, that kind of things. What works better on mobile devices, performance, that kind of things. It's important.
I think
And
people would be surprised to understand most of the traffic sometimes comes from
yeah.
mobile. So if you're not paying attention to that, that's a really good opportunity.
Yeah, and you can waste, like you said, waste opportunities. Most of the users now are checking in
Mm,
their mobile devices. It should be mobile first. I used to work on a company related with financial service, on health services as well. They think, come on, no one will check that on mobile devices, and we check the logs, and it was the most important
wow.
source of traffic.
So
Yeah,
now you have a job as the developer advocate. So a lot of people are curious when
yeah.
they hear that sort of title. What's your day-to-day work like?
I don't know if you noticed, but it's a growing niche. We try to interact with developers. Companies figure out that the people that take decisions are not the big boss, are
Mm,
the developers. When the big boss want to implement a new technology, he will ask developers. So
mm.
we advocates are the ones that whispering to developers how to work without technology. And if you know how to work without technology, and know that you can create a solid product with us, you can whisper to your boss. That's the role of the developer advocates. We teach them and show them basically how to use our product and know if we are the proper tool for a specific solution. I have to tell you that I love this job. My background of psychology and
Mm,
the experience I have as a teacher in LinkedIn Learning, when I mix that with my front end experience, that converts
yeah.
into an advocate.
Nowadays, there are so many great opportunities for developers. It's not typing in code all day. There are all these other opportunities, like your job, the developer advocate, where you get to use other skills and still the ability, I think, to communicate with developers.
If you're a developer and you have social skills, maybe there's room for another developer advocate.
So, what would you say is the difference between what a junior developer does? What do senior developers know that junior developers don't?
Let me tell you what is not. It's not about knowledge. The new junior developers have a lot of knowledge of different things, but the thing that they lack is perspective and
Mm,
experience. So that's the main difference. When you know, basically, for me, the test is if someone, when they start a new project, first thing they suggest is, oh, let's change this and start from scratch. okay, you're still junior. Yeah, usually senior developers know that usually that is not the best idea. For junior developers, the most important thing they provide is that energy,
Mm.
that hunger to eat the world. So it's a good match. I like to have teams with senior and junior developers. It works. It's a good match.
So you did a course for LinkedIn Learning on creating GitHub packages. Tell me a little bit about some of the reasons for creating a GitHub package.
For GitHub package, we can impact a lot of people with that,
Hmm.
and that is my focus on that training. Yeah, it's important to create your software packages to distribute, but what if you grow a community around that?
Mm,
What if you monetize
mm,
your effort? And what if you create a software that could impact millions and millions of other developers? It's a way to have an impact. I really enjoyed that training. Software creators trying to change the world, they can use GitHub packages. I know it sounds ambitious, but it's possible. Every single one of us use already some kind of
mm,
open source library, some kind of package. And for people that don't like daily meetings,
mhm.
they can start working by themselves
Yeah.
and create that software package that is perfect for everyone. The main goal of that course is to give you the tools to create packages and how to, maybe, if you want, make a living using it.
You know, the other thing I loved about that course was that it helps you rethink what would this be like if I were making it for everyone. I think that that's quite possibly one of the differences between a senior and a junior developer. Like maybe a junior developer would just think, I just want to make something for myself. I don't care what it looks like. Whereas if you're a senior, you'd be thinking about how do I make this usable by other people? And that makes it a much more compelling reason to build something like a GitHub package.
And also keep in mind the people that are using it, the
Hmm.
community around that. You can create documentation, you can keep track of your tests using all the tools that we have from them. We can create that kind of solid software that we can use in a community that
Hmm.
can improve lives. I do believe that software can change life, change mine. Yeah.
Releasing a package is going to teach you something that people that just do repos don't necessarily know about. The whole structure around a package and putting it on NPM and then making sure that it's on GitHub, you know, potentially turning on some of the monetization features. One thing that I thought was interesting is that you can maybe do packages internally for a company, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a public package.
I work with a company that we use GitHub packages to keep packages private
Hmm.
only for specific developers. It's not public for everyone. So it's a common question for junior developers how they can start working if they don't have experience. Maybe
Hmm.
you can start working on a package and show them.
Most people are very appreciative that you've built something that they can find some use in. And I think that experience of, you know, maybe starting to work with others and thinking beyond yourself is one of the things that I thought was super powerful about where that course is coming from. Another course that you worked on was on building monorepos. Another thing that I had found super interesting. When do you think is the right time to consider going to something like a monorepo?
People that works on big organizations maybe had this problem. Usually when we have to create different pieces of software that we have to handle on different repositories, and it's a pain, it's absolutely
Mm,
pain. So basically if we change that pattern to a monorepo architecture, we can have all dependencies in just one place.
mm.
When I learned that, I start loving again my components. I mean, I used to have hundreds, literally hundreds of different components made in Angular.
Mm,
And when I moved to monorepos, I can keep them synchronized in the same version for all
mm.
my dependencies, for my
It's beautiful.
components. Amazing. It's amazing. It changed your life. If you're a developer that works with several components, please try it. At least try it.
Maybe if you're looking for a job, if you show that you know how to build a package and you know how to structure a
Yes.
monorepo and that you understand the concepts, like the reason a monorepo is so powerful, and so many companies like Microsoft and Google and other companies, basically it's like one gargantuan repo where every project is underneath. Think about how when you have a new version of something like Babel that came out and you all of a sudden you have like 6 or 8 projects that you now have to go in and update the module. You have to update it on all of them. With a monorepo, you basically update one of those modules in one place, and then all your
Yeah.
projects are up to date. The monorepo might not be the right thing. Can you talk a little bit about that? When is maybe a polyrepo something that's better?
The most important thing that you have to learn when you try to implement a new tool is every solution have drawbacks. There is no silver bullet. If you're working on large projects, of course, monorepos is heaven. But if you're working on a small project, yeah, you will try to kill a mosquito with an atomic bomb. It's too much.
Yeah.
It's just to create the configuration for a couple of components. It's too much work. So maybe for small, medium projects is not the best idea, but for the larger, the better.
In the open source community, we're seeing big companies acquiring open source projects. So Vercel recently acquired Turbo Repo, which is this repo management tool. Basically lets you work with monorepos. I know that you use something slightly different. One thing that's been sort of worrying me is, what do you think about these companies that buy smaller open source projects? Do you think that's a good idea or a bad idea? Where do you stand on that?
Maybe it's not a popular opinion, but I think it's a good idea because in my experience, I noticed that for especially for smaller projects, when a large company buys it, we can have new tools. For example, we can have better documentation, developer advocates. Usually, we have an improvement when big companies buy smaller projects. That depends on the company, on the situation, on the market. But in my experience, I like when that happens. Monorepos are not that popular yet. It could improve workflow of several developers, especially for large companies. So I think it's a good idea.
I think you bring up an excellent point that it really validates some of these ideas, right? Even though, we know that huge companies use it, this is important enough that a company like Vercel looks at something like that and says, this is going to make it. But that's when I think you were talking about developing the system for understanding what sort of things are going to be important. That's the kind of information that I think would inform you. Hey, listen, monorepos, it's a thing. It's not just a crazy idea. So what other new technologies are you super excited about that you've heard about recently?
Right now, I'm working on a software platform that gives tools for developers to create different micro frontends. Micro frontends are isolated, encapsulated applications that can work together in the same page. For example, we can create small application based on Vue.js that can handle form, for example, that can capture your information. And also in the same page, we can have an Angular component displaying an animation that takes information from an API. I have experience working with sites using Vue, React, Plain.js, and everything just orchestrated in one single application. It's amazing.
Well, that actually brings up an excellent point that people don't understand, maybe, that in the real world, there's a lot of code that has been written in different things. One of the surprising things about going to one of the Angular conferences was how much Angular 1 code still exists out there. And you see things like Astro that will actually happily take components written in anything. And other platforms that kind of do that they'll, you mentioned web components.
Companies are not allowed to move to the next step because they have that legacy code, services that use COBOL, that kind of things.
But you mentioned financial companies. It would be very dangerous to move money around.
I work with financial companies that are trying to move into the fintech area. So they have this legacy code and they want to use it as just the good parts. Take the good parts and use it on my fintech. So micro frontends can do that.
Super exciting. So where can somebody find you?
Yeah, usually you can find me on LinkedIn. It's the social network that I'm most active.
Yeah, if you don't know this, actually, this is really interesting that when you go to LinkedIn and LinkedIn Learning, you can actually change the language. If Spanish is your first language, if you're maybe from another country, there's actually courses written in many languages. And right now you have a couple of courses in the English library. You have a lot more that I found were pretty interesting because I'm a native Spanish speaker. And love your courses. I want to see you do more in English because that's really the primary language that I consume things in. And I'm definitely going to go check out your Spanish stuff.
Thank you, Ray. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed this interview.
So super cool. Love that interview with Carlos, who is hanging around in the green room to take some questions. And let's see if I can bring him in. Let's see, side by side. How you doing, Carlos? Good to see
Hey
you, man.
Ray,
Hey.
enjoying the interview once
Yeah, that
again.
was so good. That was so good. Like once I edit it, it was I feel like it was better. Like once I cut it a little bit with some other stuff. I'm still kind of working on those things. So very excited. And what's really interesting about the interviews is that I get to watch them like 3 or 4 times because I do like an edit, like a quick pass, and then I watch them again, and then I like put all the kind of overlays and do all the like the websites. And I think I learned so much from doing them over and over again. So definitely this gets recorded, and definitely something that people can watch later on and get more out of. Now, I think that one of the things that I really loved is I think, and we need to go forward on adding this idea of creating something called Tiger Programming and Drunken Master. I like Extreme, but I think we need to definitely have a Drunken Master, and we can go forward with some of those ideas, right? Like, wouldn't that be a cool
I
get some
think
of
I
the
may
Japanese
have
styles?
experience in Drunken Master,
Yeah,
maybe in my
that's
university
already a
years.
thing. We don't
It's
need to.
possible, yeah.
Yes,
Not on my
yes,
resume, but yeah, maybe.
yes. Super cool. So actually, some people suggested that I do some other what you call it, questions into the tool. So let me switch to that because I did a couple of, let's see, side by side, and somebody suggested that I type my name in, and these people that I have no idea what they who they are. I don't know if there's like other famous Ray Villaloboses, but that's what I typed, and so that's what I got. I got a much better response when somebody suggested that I do a holographic image of Ada Lovelace. So that was better, but I don't know. I gotta look up these other Ray Villalobos. I'm always proud that if I look for Ray Villalobos, that I can usually find find my name usually first. But I might have to do some research into who all these other people are. So let's switch back to you. So um, yeah,
Lucky you, because I have
yeah.
the same name from a character on Desperate Housewives. So,
Oh, really?
in my case, if I search for Carlos Solis, there's another guy which is way more famous than me.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I think I'm working hard to stay in that number one spot. So let's see, we had some people comment on the fact that we had the daily meetings. I think some people were shocked. I don't know where that comment went, but talk a little bit about maybe those daily meetings and what made you like what took you from that first sort of concept of not enjoying them to really turn you around and to really liking them because I'm still stressed by it. So
Yeah, but the first thing is like it's a short meeting. That's the most important
oh,
thing.
that's right.
So it's just 15 minutes that you spend planning the rest of the day. It's not that hard. Just synchronize with everyone else working on the team. And this way you can improve your performance. So, for example, let's think that you can start working on one thing and some other guy on your team have information that you don't. Maybe something like, oh, don't start working on that. I'm still, I don't know, programming the API. So maybe tomorrow is ready. So you save your time wasted on a non-functional API, that kind of things. Just 15 minutes where everyone in the team can synchronize. It's not that hard. And the rest of the day is yours,
That's
usually.
a good point. I mean, yeah, I think it would. And now that you think about it, if you just sync quickly and kind of bring up anything like, hey, a new module just updated, we need to go through and like once
Exactly.
everybody knows, everybody's on the same page super quick. I can see where that could be useful. You're maybe turning me around. I don't know. We'll have to think about it some more.
Maybe. It takes a while to grow up inside you,
Yeah.
but yeah, it
Yes.
works.
Another thing that people commented on was the variety of the people in your life that have different backgrounds, which I thought was pretty cool. I've heard about that a lot. Like I know a lot of people. You're the second psychology major in this series of talks, which I thought was interesting. So that's pretty cool. You talked about, how one of your mentors was a painter. You
Yeah.
really do find, even I think even if you find pure people that came from a development background, I think you'll even find that those people have a lot of other interests. There's this like secret if you go to the LinkedIn offices in San Francisco. I don't know if I'm saying anything I shouldn't here, but there's a secret music room in the building, and if you can find it, there is a number of like keyboards, drums, all kinds of like music things. And developers, actually, I found a lot of developers like love music. So, and some of my colleagues also very good musicians. So that, ability of getting people with not different backgrounds, but also different interests. I like what you said about it makes just for a much richer experience in the teams, which is, I think, great. So let's see. We also had this is another good comment about firm believers, senior developers can train and let people grow through mentorship. You've definitely had some experience with mentorship. Have you gotten a lot of sort of mentoring opportunities? Like when's a good time to like search for that? Is maybe not as a beginning developer, or do you recommend that at what point?
I think that at the very beginning, it's important to fail for a new developer, and I give them space for that because failure it's another way to learn. So once a developer has some experience and the basics, that's the moment to start working with mentorship. And mentorship is basically not teaching someone how to do things like I do, but showing them the right path for them. For example, if someone finds trouble, I don't know, implementing one feature, it's not about how I do it, but showing them my skills to fix it. Because every problem is different. So, what my main goal is to teach that, showing them, okay, so learn how this problem works, what is the constraints we have, and think about it, how you can find a solution. Use your brain, use new paths in your brain to find that solution. That is the most important thing to me, to teach someone that is starting on that, because like we already mentioned in the interview, and that is the constant here in this industry, everything is changing. So if I show someone how to do one specific way to fix things, that will be worthless in, I don't know, 6 months. The important thing is the skills, how you learn, and how you master that skills. It's about to be a senior developer.
Yeah, so it's not so like I think what you mentioned was really good. Having some experience before you find a mentor is
Mhm.
maybe really valuable, but then what the mentor is going to teach you is not necessarily how to program, because that's the
Exactly.
kind of thing that you develop yourself, but how do you solve problems that you've had before, like some of the issues with how do you learn to approach solving a problem, and even just that learning that it's okay to ask questions, it's okay to communicate, you want communication, and teaching those things that you don't learn in schools. We talked about how you work with teams in a better environment. I think a lot of developers have to like lose that. You're not the only person working on this thing. You really need to learn how to work in a team environment much better. So that's cool. Also, I think somebody mentioned, and this the comment was basically about, Agile, getting started with Agile. What about people that are kind of a little bit fresher? Is that something that they should start learning right away when somebody is new, or do you recommend that they have a little more experience before jumping into something like an Agile structure?
That is not related with the skills
Hmm.
of one developer. Is mostly how we can interact each other. So
Hmm.
it's perfect for someone that it's in the early years.
Hmm.
Actually, I think it's better. So this way we can learn how to work in a team, as a team, and that's very important. Because
Hmm.
if you let's pretend that you start learning your developer skills, but as a lone wolf. So you lose some kind of skills such as communication, and to be humble, and how to you receive.
the episode. I just went live again. If the episode died for other people, there's this little extra piece here. I don't really have a lot more. Actually, it cleared out the interview chat. There wasn't really any other comments other than there was an echo, which I fixed. But thank you so much, man. I appreciate your time. I can't wait to do more of these. I was scrolling through your list of courses, and I was in Spanish, and I was like, wow, this never stops. There's like so many other stuff that I want to check out. And maybe it'll teach me one thing that I feel like I need to learn is like when I went to work at a Spanish radio station, I've forgotten like what the different styles of music were in English. I think I don't know how to say programming things in Spanish. And so I think that maybe going through your courses will help me with some of that. So thank you so much again, Carlos. We'll
Thank
talk to you
you,
later.
Ray. Thank you, Ray. I
Bye bye.
really enjoy spending time with you. Bye.
Super cool. Bye bye.